Hello, guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Skills and Abilities. So, we've covered just about every single assassin skill, with the exception of the trap tree. And you know what? I'm actually kind of glad that I didn't cover the trap tree a long time ago, because they made a lot of changes to the traps. And for good reason, we are now going to go over the new traps, right? Because they added things like the ability to apply negative resistance to traps now. Also, traps don't take up the spaces of elites inside of areas when you cast them. Tons of very good things have traps. The trap tree has definitely seen a large number of changes over the Diablo 2 Resurrected couple seasons, and definitely have been in a lot better place than before. So if you maybe didn't like trapsins before and you wanted to go over them now, well, now seems to be a good time to do it. Let's start out with the lowliest of the skills on the trap tree, which is Fireblast. Now, Fireblast really just kind of seems like that potion that you find. I hate to say it, but it really is. It's really just kind of like that potion that you find, the exploding potions that you can sometimes buy in the shops too. But basically, it's literally just the exploding potion. Like there's not much else to it. If you go over to let's go over to Frigid Highlands real quick, and you chuck it. I mean that's literally what it does. It just throws a potion. Whom, whom, whum. Now, because it is a trap, it is affected by increased attack speed, not cast rate. So if you utilize increased attack speed on your equipment, like for instance, if I were to take these mosaics off, you'll notice that it doesn't go quite as fast anymore because I no longer have that increased attack speed and I'm no longer using a quick weapon. But I put them back on and now, bam, now I'm going my full speed again, which is fine because that's exactly what Fireblast is. It's a skill that puts a pretty decent amount of damage in terms of AoE, which is exactly what it does. It actually does AoE damage. So if we go ahead and stack it out real quick and bring it up to its maximum, you'll notice it does about 777 damage at maximum. It costs 7.7 mana, and it has a 3.3 yard radius. So in a circle around, it's going to do a decent amount of damage. Now it does have synergies, lots of synergies. Holy Jesus, it's got lots of synergies, right? So it's got frickin' Wake of Fire, it's got Wake of Inferno. That's just two of the synergies. It also has Shockweb. It also has Lightning Sentry. So 1, 2, 3, 4 synergies for this thing, including Charged Bolt Sentry, which is also one of them. So you really can't max out Fireblast, but you notice that right now it's at 8,479 damage, which is kind of insane. It actually does a pretty significant amount of damage to the point where literally you can indeed actually kill a large number of monsters with just the Fireblast skill. One of the main problems with it, though, is that, of course, you have to stand there and just chuck them, which can be a little bit of a pain in the butt. And this character apparently doesn't have a frickin' Ravenfrost on. I guess she doesn't have a Ravenfrost on. But basically, you can just sit there and throw the Fire Blast and dish out a pretty decent amount of damage when it comes to AoE-ness. Now, you obviously would want to combine this with something else besides just simply the Fire Blast skill. You can utilize other skills in the process. Like, for instance, I could have used Wake of Fire. Would have been a good choice. Let's see if I can rescue myself here. So you would put down your Wake of Fires like this, and then you would start throwing off your Fire Blast. And that way you'd have two things going off at the same time. And you could cast your Wake of Fires as you're moving, and try and do so that kind of way. Now, whether or not you actually succeed with this usually involves having something to kite around. So this is kind of important when it comes to the trap tree, and it's something that I don't particularly enjoy myself as a feature as far as the trap tree goes. Some other people may disagree with me, and that's perfectly fine. Disagree to your heart's content. But when it comes to dishing out your damage, I don't really like the kite and flight kind of persona. And that's basically what this is. It's a kite and flight persona. Now, if you have a reliable warrior, for instance, if I were to go down here and grab a Shadow Master, before I grab this ability, so let's go ahead and grab this, and then let's put some in. Shockweb. Let's just go ahead and tap it out real quick. All right, so now we can cast our little Shadow Master. And when we cast our Shadow Master, we're going to have somebody to run interference for us. And this is what's important. Having somebody to run an interference means that now we don't have to actually tank everything ourselves. So now we can put all of our things up. We can let our Shadow Master go in there. And then we can throw our Doojanks up and dish out our damage that way. Right? So we can start throwing our little Fireblasts in there, putting our little Wake of Infernos up, etc. And you notice that now that we have someone to actively tank for us, things aren't so bad. This is basically the trap tree in a nutshell. The trap tree in a nutshell is a fight or flight scenario, which is basically where you're constantly running, kiting, fight and kite. And it's not really my personal favorite way to play, but it definitely is the way that the trap tree works. Now, Fireblast specifically is not really one of the main abilities that people utilize in the trap tree. It does have some interesting uses as far as synergies for other things. Like, for instance, on the Death Sentry, you get a maximum number of Fireblasts per shot. And let me just go ahead and do this. Move out of the way real quick so you can see it. It says Fireblast 1 shot per 3 levels. So every 3 levels you get 1 additional shot on Death Sentry, which means that if you max out Fireblast, you're going to get 20 divided by 3, whatever the hell that is, 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. So about 5 extra shots. You'll get about 5 extra shots if you max out Fireblast, which means that the Death Sentries will stay up for much longer. And it's interesting. Shockweb also has a synergy, which is 1 spike per 3 levels. Now, Shockweb used to be pretty bad because it had a really long next hit delay, but due to the patch, the most recent patch that fixed next hit delay issues, this actually no longer has a huge next hit delay issue, so you can actually utilize it much better. Also, Fireblast is a synergy for Wake of Fire and Wake of Inferno. Now, Wake of Inferno is not really all that amazing. It's kind of decent for single target if the monster will stand still, but if they move around a lot, well, it's not really going to do very well. Wake of Fire, on the other hand, is actually an ability which recently has seen huge buffs, and we'll talk about that one next, but it is also a synergy for Wake of Fire. So if you do build Wake of Fire, which is a specific build that you might just consider, you're going to have to put 20 points into Fireblast regardless, which means that you're probably going to look something like this in terms of your skill tree, which is Wake of Fire on your right click and Fireblast on your left click with your Shadow Warrior and usually something else going on. You really can't max out Fireblast because it has so many synergies, but you will max out Fireblast to synergize other abilities. I don't necessarily recommend it for Death Sentry because Death Sentry just isn't really worth dumping a ton of points into. And if you were to max out Death Sentry and then max out Fireblast, that would be 40 additional points, and you really just don't have the points for that. Not realistically, anyway. Fireblast is pretty good in the early game. It's been my experience that even in like normal difficulty and things like that, it actually does work pretty well. So if you were to go to just a lower level character and let me see if I can just reset this real quick. And let's just go ahead and put 1 point into Fireblast, and let's pull some of these trap skillers out of my inventory, as well as the Annie and the torch. And we're still left with level 8, which isn't too bad. So let's go to like Darkwood. And what you'll notice is that level 8 Fireblast is still plenty good enough to kill most of these guys. It actually works surprisingly well for damage output in the lower levels, and it does enough AoE that even when you're encountering large groups of monsters in the early part of the game, it definitely can be very nice. So when you're talking about Fireblast, it can be actually very useful early game. And then once you do get access to Wake of Fire, you can of course add that into the mix, and Wake of Fire actually does surprisingly well too in the early game. It's actually one of the better abilities, and obviously if you're going to build Wake of Fire, you're going to be building the synergies for Wake of Fire, so you're going to cap out Fireblast in the process. There's really not a lot more to talk about when it comes to Fireblast. It does have some interesting PvP options. If you utilize the assassin in PvP and you are like a trap assassin or something like that, having a really high Fireblast, like you will sometimes have, depending on how your points are distributed, can actually be a pretty significant amount of fire damage that you can just toss at the target, willy-nilly whenever you have an opportunity. And it acts as a pretty decent ranged ability just for applying a decent amount of fire damage. Because it doesn't require a direct hit, also, it's a 3.3 yard radius, you don't necessarily have to hit them, so even if they try and run away from it, there's a very good chance that they may still get hit by the 3.3 yard explosion, which is rather interesting. Anyway, as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, even when we're just talking about the Fireblast ability. And as always, keep watching.